Today, we celebrate the bounty of our land. The words echo in the cheers of the crowd. The queen's eyes scan over her people, grateful for their loyalty. She watches as the dancers twirl and the singers raise their voices in harmony. The kingdom flourishes, and it is her rule that has kept it thriving. But amidst the happiness, something gnaws at her heart. She shifts her gaze to her son, the prince. Kofi stands beside her, his figure tall and proud, yet something about him feels different today. His usual sparkle is replaced with a cool distance, a restlessness in his eyes that the queen cannot ignore. Her hand tightens around the ceremonial staff she holds, the weight of it pressing into her palm. She has ruled with strength, with wisdom, but for the first time, she wonders if her time is ending. Is this the moment her kingdom will be torn apart? The crowd's excitement fades into the background as the queen's mind sharpens. She feels the shift in the air, a tightening in her chest. She turns, and there, emerging from the crowd like a shadow, is Esi, her most trusted advisor. Esi's face is solemn, her eyes filled with urgency. "Your Majesty," Esi whispers, her voice barely audible over the music. "I have news. Terrible news." The queen leans in, her gaze fixed on Esi. "It is your son," Esi continues. "He has pledged himself to King Asante." A cold chill runs through the queen. She stares at Esi in disbelief. "What do you mean?" "Kofi has promised to give the throne to Asante," Esi says, her words laced with sorrow. "In exchange for wealth and power. He has betrayed you, Your Majesty." The words feel like a blow, sharp and unforgiving. The queen's mind races, her heart heavy with a grief that cuts deeper than any wound. Her own blood, her son, has chosen power over family. Her breath catches, and she struggles to maintain her composure. She looks back at Kofi, who is now laughing, his eyes bright with excitement as he speaks with King Asante. They stand together, sharing a moment of triumph, oblivious to the storm brewing in the queen's heart. She turns away quickly, her face betraying none of the pain she feels. Her thoughts are a whirlwind, each one crashing into the next. She wants to confront him, to demand an explanation, to end the treachery before it can go any further. But she knows better. To act rashly would destroy everything she has built. Her eyes narrow as she watches Kofi again. He meets her gaze across the hall, and for a fleeting moment, his smirk lingers. That smirk, the symbol of a secret deal that could unravel her kingdom. It twists her insides, makes her pulse quicken. She takes a deep breath. The festival continues around her, but the joy feels distant, like a song played on the wind. Her mind is far from the dancing, far from the celebration. Her kingdom, her people, her very legacy, are now in the hands of a traitor. Her grip tightens on the staff once more. The weight of the crown presses down on her. It has always been heavy, but now it feels unbearable. The stakes have never been higher. Kofi's betrayal is not just a blow to her heart, it is a challenge to everything she has worked for. And yet, despite the heartbreak, despite the anguish, Queen Amina feels something stirring inside her, a fire she thought she had buried long ago. She straightens, her posture regal, her resolve hardening. She cannot let her son's treachery go unpunished. She will not allow the kingdom to fall into the hands of a man who would destroy it for his own greed. Her fists clench at her sides. "I will reclaim my kingdom," she vows silently, her voice a whisper to herself. No matter the cost. He will not succeed. She takes one last look at Kofi and King Asante. Their whispered words, their shared smiles, they mean nothing. Not anymore. The queen's heart hardens, and with it, a new battle begins. A battle for her kingdom. For her legacy. The sound of drums fills the air, but to Queen Amina, they are the drumbeats of war. She watches her son one last time before she steps away, her decision made. The game has changed. And she will play it to win. Queen Amina stands at the heart of her kingdom, the pride of her people. Her reign has been long and prosperous, bringing peace and unity to the land. She is a symbol of strength and wisdom, loved by all for her fairness. Her people look to her as a steady guide, someone who leads with courage, never wavering. For years, she has nurtured this kingdom, guiding it through challenges, always with her people's best interests at heart. But now, whispers of change drift through the air. The once vibrant heart of her kingdom is beginning to beat a little slower. The queen feels it in the quiet moments, the moments when the kingdom's joy is louder than her own thoughts. Her reign, though powerful, is beginning to be tested. At her side stands Kofi, her son, the one she has groomed to inherit the throne. He has always been a source of pride. But lately, something in his eyes has shifted. His gaze, once filled with hope for the kingdom, now burns with a quiet dissatisfaction. He speaks little about the kingdom's future. More often, his words turn inward, focused on what he feels he deserves. "I am destined for more than this," he says one evening, his voice low, but filled with certainty. "The kingdom is mine to command. I will not live in your shadow forever." The queen watches him, the heaviness of his words sinking into her chest. She has raised him to lead, but she wonders, what kind of leader does he wish to become? The days pass, and Kofi's restlessness only deepens. He begins to speak less of the people and more of himself. His ambition grows like a fire left unchecked. She hears him talk to his trusted friends, the way his words twist the future of the kingdom. He no longer stands by her side as a son should. In the dead of night, he sneaks away, leaving the palace without a word to anyone. The queen watches his figure disappear into the shadows, a silent question growing in her heart. Where does he go? Whom does he meet? One night, she finds the answer. Kofi's secret meetings with King Asante, a rival ruler, have become more frequent. It is in these quiet moments, away from the kingdom's watchful eyes, that Kofi makes promises of betrayal. "I will give you the throne," he tells Asante, his voice thick with desire. "In return, you will give me the power and wealth I deserve. My mother's time is ending. I will be the one to rule." Queen Amina feels the sting of those words, even though she cannot hear them. She knows, in the deepest part of her heart, that Kofi has betrayed her. The weight of it is unbearable, the truth like poison slipping through her veins. She turns to her most trusted advisor, Esi, who has always been by her side. Esi approaches her one morning, her face pale with concern. "Your Majesty, I have seen the signs. Your son has made an alliance with King Asante. He has promised him the throne in exchange for power. He is plotting against you." The queen's heart sinks, the pain of betrayal almost too much to bear. But her resolve is clear. Esi is right. Her son has turned against her. "I knew something was wrong," the queen whispers. "But I wanted to believe it was a passing thought, a phase. How could my own flesh and blood?" Esi's eyes fill with sorrow. He has chosen power over loyalty. There is no turning back. The queen's mind whirls with the weight of her dilemma. As a mother, she loves Kofi with all her heart. She raised him, nurtured him, believed in him. But as a queen, she has a duty to her people, to the kingdom. If Kofi succeeds in his betrayal, everything she has worked for will crumble. "I must protect the kingdom," Queen Amina thinks, her hand tightening on the stone walls of her chamber. "I cannot let him destroy it. I must act. But how? How does a mother face her son when his ambition threatens everything? She watches him from afar, his smirking face a sharp reminder of his silent rebellion. He no longer hides his resentment. He speaks out against her in subtle ways, questioning her wisdom, undermining her decisions. His words plant seeds of doubt in the people's hearts, and soon, the whispers grow louder. The queen's authority begins to fray at the edges. The alliance with King Asante deepens. Kofi grows bolder. With every whispered promise, with every act of defiance, he pulls further away from the throne he once hoped to inherit. The kingdom, her kingdom, stands on the brink of collapse. Esi feels the pain of the betrayal, too. She once saw Kofi as the future of the kingdom. Now, she mourns the loss of the prince she had once trusted. Her loyalty to Queen Amina never wavers, but her heart aches for the son who could have been. As the tension rises, Queen Amina retreats into herself. She spends her nights pacing, thinking of what to do. Should she confront Kofi? Should she prepare for war? The uncertainty eats at her. She watches the people celebrate, unaware of the storm that is brewing. The kingdom is still strong, but it feels like the calm before a tempest. The queen knows the day will come when she must face her son, not as a mother, but as a queen. And she will have to make a choice: protect her kingdom or protect the bloodline she holds so dear. The weight of her duty presses down, and Queen Amina understands. This is the moment that will define her legacy. The time to act is nearing, and the future of the kingdom will rest in the balance between love and duty. Queen Amina watches her kingdom from a distance, heart heavy with the weight of the storm she knows is coming. She has ruled for many years, but the winds of change are now blowing stronger than ever. Her son, once her pride, has turned against her, and the future of the kingdom hangs by a thread. But Queen Amina is not one to falter in the face of danger. Quietly, she begins to gather her loyal warriors, her most trusted advisors, and the neighboring tribes who share her love for the land. Her allies are few but strong, and in the shadows, they prepare for the battle that is sure to come. We must move carefully, she tells her closest warriors, her voice steady and sure. Our time will come, but it is not yet. We gather strength quietly, so that when the storm hits, we are ready. Meanwhile, King Assante's eyes are everywhere. His spies are like the wind, unseen yet ever present. They follow Queen Amina's every move, whispering secrets into his ears. He knows of her growing resistance, and he tightens his grip on the throne through her son Kofi. Assante's mind is sharp, and he uses Kofi's ambition as his weapon, feeding him promises of wealth and power. The kingdom Amina has built for so long begins to slip through her fingers, as Kofi's desire for more becomes a force of its own. Kofi is no longer the son she once knew. His meetings with Assante's spies become more frequent, and his words grow bolder, filled with pride and the scent of betrayal. The throne, once the symbol of a shared future, is now a prize he believes he alone deserves. I will not wait for her to die of old age, Kofi says to his allies, his voice heavy with the arrogance of a man who believes he has already won. Queen Amina's heart aches with each passing day, but she keeps her pain hidden. She watches her son's every move, and each step he takes toward Assante's side is a dagger to her soul. She calls for him to meet her privately. The moment of truth has come. Kofi, she says, her voice calm but firm, you have betrayed me. You have chosen to side with Assante and turn against the very kingdom that raised you. Kofi stands before her, unrepentant, his eyes full of fire. I deserve more than this. You've kept me in your shadow for too long. I am not your servant. I am your son, and I will take what is mine. His words strike the queen like thunder. You think I've kept you in my shadow? I have given you everything. My love, my trust, my kingdom. And this is how you repay me. She steps back, her heart torn in two. You are no longer the son I raised. You are a stranger to me now. Kofi's anger flares, and he spits the words out with venom. You should have given me more. I was meant for greatness, and you held me back. I am going to take the throne from you, and no one will stop me. The queen's heart shatters, but she knows the battle is far from over. She will not fight him with rage. Instead, she sets her mind to a plan, one that will buy her the time she needs to protect the kingdom from the chaos Kofi is about to unleash. A cruel idea takes root in her mind. She will stage her own death. The plan is executed with great care. Her body is prepared, and the word of her death spreads like wildfire. Kofi, blinded by his own ambition, believes that he has won. He arranges a public ceremony to mourn his mother's passing, his heart swelling with false triumph. I will rule now, he declares, standing tall and proud. The throne is mine. His confidence grows with each passing day, and his arrogance becomes his greatest weakness. He makes decisions in haste, thinking the kingdom is his to control. Little does he know, his mother is watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. ESI, loyal to Queen Amina, is sent on a dangerous mission. She must travel to King Assante's camp with false information, sowing distrust between him and Kofi. The plan is risky, but ESI's sharp mind knows what must be done. We must break their bond, ESI says to herself as she moves in silence. Only then can we restore balance. Her lies are like seeds planted in the fertile soil of suspicion, and slowly, the cracks begin to show. Assante begins to question Kofi's loyalty, and Kofi starts to wonder if Asante truly has his best interests at heart. The foundation of their alliance grows shaky, and Queen Amina's allies are ready to strike when the time is right. With Kofi growing more careless and the alliance between him and Asante faltering, Queen Amina prepares her forces. Her loyal warriors and allied tribes are ready to fight for the kingdom they all love. The quiet gathering of strength has now become a hidden army, and they wait for her signal. But even with her forces ready, the queen knows that time is running out. The storm she has set in motion is almost upon them. The tension of war fills the air, and every step she takes brings her closer to the final confrontation. The calm before the storm presses heavily on her chest. Her mind races with the weight of what must be done. She will not back down. The kingdom will not fall into the hands of her son, not while she still breathes. Queen Amina steels herself for what is to come, knowing that the future of her people will be decided in the battles that lie ahead. With her army growing stronger, her son's false victory in place, and the shadows of betrayal closing in, Queen Amina prepares to face Kofi and Asante once more. The queen has given everything for this moment, and now she must give even more. The time for deception is nearly over, and soon, the kingdom's fate will be sealed. But Queen Amina is no stranger to loss or struggle. She has led her people through many trials. And now, as the storm clouds gather on the horizon, she faces the greatest challenge of all, one that will shape the kingdom for generations to come. The battle rages on, fierce and unforgiving. The clash of weapons echoes across the land, and the air is thick with the scent of sweat and blood. The warriors of the queen's army fight with fierce determination, despite being outnumbered. They follow her lead, trusting her to guide them through the chaos. The ground trembles beneath their feet as they press forward, each strike and shout a testament to the will to survive. With the sun high in the sky, the queen stands at the center of it all, watching her forces move like a well-oiled machine. She had known this day would come, and though the odds are against her, she has planned for it. Her strategy is clear, her mind sharp. Hold the line, she commands, and her soldiers obey without hesitation. As the battle continues, her forces push back the enemy line. The rival king's soldiers falter, confusion spreading among them as Queen Amina's warriors outmaneuver their every move. The queen's brilliance shines through in her tactics. She knows when to retreat, when to strike, and when to surprise. She leads from the front, guiding her people with precision and strength. The tide of the battle begins to shift in her favor, but it is not over yet. Just as victory seems within reach, the queen's heart sinks. Through the smoke and dust of the battlefield, a new figure appears. It is her son Kofi, leading the enemy's forces. His face is hard, filled with the same arrogance that had once been his strength. His betrayal is now complete. "You were always too weak to rule," Kofi sneers, his voice cutting through the noise of the battle. "I told you, this kingdom is mine now. And nothing you do will stop me." The queen's heart clenches with sorrow, but her resolve hardens. "You have betrayed me, my son," she says, her voice steady despite the storm around them. "But I will not let you destroy my kingdom." Her eyes lock with Kofi's, and she knows this is it. The moment that will decide everything. "I challenge you to a duel," she declares, her voice carrying across the battlefield. The warriors on both sides pause, sensing the weight of the queen's words. There is no turning back now. Kofi laughs, his arrogance on full display. "You think you can defeat me? I'm the one who has the power now." But the queen's eyes burn with a fire that has not been quenched. She steps forward, drawing her sword. The ground beneath them feels like it could crumble, and the sound of the battle fades into the distance as mother and son prepare for a confrontation that will change everything. Their blades meet with a resounding clash, sparks flying as steel strikes steel. The queen's movements are swift and precise, her strength undeniable. She is not just fighting for her life but for the future of her people. Kofi's strikes are wild, driven by anger and pride. His arrogance clouds his judgment, and the queen sees it in every move he makes. "You were never meant to rule," she says between strikes, her voice carrying the weight of years of sacrifice. "I gave you everything, Kofi. And this is how you repay me." Kofi's eyes burn with fury. "You held me back," he roars. "You kept me in the shadows, while you took everything. This kingdom was always mine." Each blow exchanged between them speaks of their pain and betrayal. With every strike, the queen's strength grows, while Kofi's desperation deepens. Her heart aches with the truth of what has become of her son, But she cannot let that stop her. She is fighting for her people, for the future of the land, and for the legacy she has built. As the duel rages on, Queen Amina's words echo in the air. "I knew you would betray me," she says, her voice steady despite the chaos of battle. "And I prepared for it." Kofi hesitates, confusion flashing across his face. "What do you mean?" The queen's eyes shine with unshakable confidence. "I knew you would choose the path of greed. That's why I made alliances with the leaders of your closest supporters. They will turn on you, Kofi. They already have." And just as the queen speaks those words, the soldiers who had once followed Kofi begin to hesitate. They lower their weapons, their loyalty wavering. Doubt spreads like wildfire among his ranks. Kofi's soldiers, once so sure of his rule, now see the truth. One by one, they turn their weapons away from the queen's army and towards Kofi. "No!" Kofi cries, his face contorted in disbelief. "You cannot do this. You are betraying me." But the queen's words have struck true, and the soldiers no longer see him as their leader. The truth has seeped into their hearts, and now Kofi stands alone. His army, once an unstoppable force, falters and crumbles around him. With the balance tipping in her favor, the queen's warriors rally behind her. The rival king's army, thrown into disarray, retreats in chaos. The queen's strategic mind has outwitted both Kofi and King Asante, and the battlefield shifts in her favor. The queen turns back to her son, who stands at the center of the chaos, his confidence shattered. He stares at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You were always smarter than me," he says, his voice thick with regret. "But I was meant to be king." The queen's face softens, but she knows what must be done. The battle is over. Her victory is secured, but the price of it weighs heavily on her heart. With one final, decisive strike, she disarms her son, his sword falling to the ground with a heavy thud. Kofi falls to his knees, his face a mix of anger and shame. The queen stands over him, her sword still raised, but there is no joy in her heart. "This was never about power," she says quietly. "It was about protecting our people. You could have had that too, if only you had trusted me." As Kofi looks up at her, his eyes filled with regret, the weight of his betrayal finally sinks in. The war is over, but the scars of the conflict will never fade. With her son defeated, Queen Amina turns her eyes to the horizon. The kingdom has been reclaimed, but the cost of victory is heavy. Her heart aches for the son she has lost, for the future that will never be, but she knows the people need her. The battle is won, but the struggle is far from over. She looks over the battlefield, where the fallen warriors of both sides now lie in the dirt. There will be no celebration, only the quiet understanding that peace has come at a steep price. The war is over. But the queen knows, as does her people, that the scars of this day will remain. The battle had ended, but the air remained thick with the weight of its aftermath. The warriors, once fierce and filled with rage, now stood silent, their swords sheathed. The ground, stained with blood, bore witness to the fierce conflict that had torn the land apart. But the true test was not the victory of battle, it was the cost of it. The queen's soldiers dragged her son, shackled and humbled, to stand before her. His head hung low, and his once proud stance was now a shadow of what it had been. The woman who had once cradled him in her arms now stood above him, her heart heavy. She looked down at the man he had become, the traitor who had once been her pride. No joy filled her eyes, only a deep sorrow. The victory was hollow. The crown she had fought so hard to protect felt heavier than ever. "What should be done with a traitor who was once your blood?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. The question hung in the air like an unspoken truth. The kingdom was hers again, but at what cost? She searched for answers in the eyes of those around her, but none could give her the solace she sought. Her hand clenched around the hilt of her sword, the cold metal a reminder of the traditions she had sworn to uphold. "You betrayed me, Kofi," she whispered, almost to herself. "You betrayed your people." Kofi raised his head, his eyes burning with defiance, though there was a flicker of regret beneath the anger. "I may have betrayed you, mother, but I will never bow to you," he spat, his voice full of bitterness. "You may have won this battle, but the kingdom is mine. It always was." His words stung, but the queen stood tall. She had expected his defiance, had prepared herself for it. Yet, the decision still weighed heavily on her soul. She had to make a choice, one that would shape the future of her kingdom and her heart. After a long silence, she spoke, her voice trembling with the depth of her pain. "I cannot kill my son," she whispered, her heart breaking. "I cannot destroy the life I gave birth to." She turned away, taking a deep breath, and ordered that Kofi be imprisoned for life. Stripped of his titles and power, he would live out his days in the shadows of his own betrayal. The decision was made, but the weight of it pressed down on her chest. A mother's love could not be so easily severed, even by treachery. Kofi, bound and broken, was led away. As he walked, his steps faltered, and for the first time, he seemed uncertain. The arrogance that had once filled him with power had crumbled, leaving only the regret of what could have been. But it was too late for apologies, too late for change. The queen stood alone in the stillness of her victory. The kingdom had been reclaimed, but the air felt empty. The throne was hers, but the joy of ruling had slipped away. She surveyed her people, knowing that the trust they once had in her was fractured. They had seen the prince, the one they had loved, fall from grace. The wounds of betrayal ran deep. "The damage is done," she murmured, her eyes sweeping across the land. The path ahead would be long and difficult, but she was no stranger to hardship. The people would rebuild, as they always had, but the scars would remain. In the days that followed, the kingdom's heart was divided. Some celebrated the queen's triumph, while others mourned the loss of the prince they had once believed in. The queen could feel the division in the air, the rift between those who saw her as a hero and those who saw her as the woman who had taken away their hope. But she had done what needed to be done. She had saved the kingdom, even if it meant losing a part of her heart in the process. One day, she visited the prison where Kofi was held, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she had made. She stood before the cold iron bars, looking at the son who had once been her pride. He was not the same boy she had raised. The fire that had once burned brightly in his eyes had dimmed, and in its place was a hollow emptiness. "Power is fleeting," she said softly, more to herself than to him. "But family cannot be so easily restored." Kofi said nothing, his eyes locked on hers. The silence between them spoke louder than any words could. The queen knew this was her greatest sacrifice, the love of her son, the hope for his redemption. She could only pray that one day, he would understand the weight of her mercy. As the years passed, Queen Amina's name spread far and wide, not just as a powerful ruler, but as a wise and fair leader. Her story became a lesson for all who would listen, that strength alone cannot hold a kingdom, that loyalty is the foundation of power, and that mercy, though often hard to give, is a mark of true leadership. Her rule was respected across the land, and her people, though scarred, began to rebuild. But the scars remained, not just in the land, but in the queen's heart. The love she had once felt for her son was gone, replaced by a sorrow that no victory could erase. The kingdom was healing, but the queen's heart was not. In her solitude, the queen reflected on all that had happened, on the lessons she had learned. Power can be taken, but love and loyalty, they are fragile, she whispered, her voice heavy with the weight of her journey. "I have restored my kingdom, but the cost is greater than I ever imagined." She knew that her true legacy would not be the battles won or the throne she sat upon. It would be the strength she had shown in the face of betrayal, the wisdom she had gained in the moments of her greatest pain. And in that wisdom, she vowed to lead with a heart tempered by both mercy and power, knowing that the most important lessons come not from the throne, but from the love and loyalty that bind a ruler to her people. And so, the Queen's story was told for generations to come, a tale of power, betrayal, mercy, and the heavy price of love lost and regained. Her kingdom was whole once more, but her heart, like the land, would never be the same. The weight of the throne had never felt heavier than it did now. Once a beloved prince, Kofi had fallen so far from grace, his ambition tearing apart the very bond he had with his mother. Queen Amina sat in silence, contemplating the price of it all. What is a throne without love? She wondered aloud, staring at the land her people had fought to reclaim. The kingdom was hers again, but the heartache of her son's betrayal was a wound that no crown could heal. Kofi had once been her pride, her joy. He had been the prince who would one day sit upon the throne, the one who would carry on her legacy. But his thirst for power had consumed him, and now, there was nothing left of him but a traitor shackled in the cold prison. Ambition is a dangerous path, the queen whispered to herself. The very ambition that had once made Kofi a promising leader had now destroyed him. Betrayal had not only torn her apart, but it had also shattered Kofi. His hunger for power had isolated him, pulling him away from the very people he once swore to protect. As much as her heart ached for the son she had lost, she knew that his actions had led him to this fate. He had destroyed his own soul in the pursuit of the throne, and now he stood alone. Justice could have been swift. A traitor like Kofi deserved no mercy, and many had urged the queen to take his life. But she had chosen the harder path. She had chosen mercy. Justice is not always what we desire, but what our people need, she had said when she had ordered his imprisonment. A life of isolation was what he deserved, but in sparing him, Queen Amina had shouldered a burden that would never be easy to bear. Mercy, however, had its cost. The kingdom was restored, and the people rejoiced, but inside, the queen felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She had saved her kingdom, but the price was her own peace. I saved my kingdom, she reflected quietly, but lost the son I once loved. The people celebrated her wisdom, but she knew that true leadership demanded sacrifices far greater than the throne could offer. In her heart, she understood now that the balance of strength and compassion was the true mark of leadership. She had always known the strength of the sword, but now she understood the strength it took to offer a hand of mercy. Power is not in ruling with an iron fist, but in knowing when to offer a hand, she thought. That was the true test of a ruler's greatness, knowing when to fight, and when to forgive. As the kingdom began to heal, Queen Amina saw the loyalty of her people. She thought of the warriors who had stood by her side during the battle, who had fought for the future of the land. Her heart swelled with pride, knowing that loyalty was the strongest bond between a ruler and their people. Loyalty binds a kingdom stronger than any crown, she said, her voice filled with resolve. The loyalty of her people had carried her through the darkest moments, and now, it would guide the kingdom toward peace. Queen Amina walked through the streets of the kingdom, the air filled with the sounds of rebuilding. She had saved the throne, but she knew the real task lay in winning back the hearts of her people. I may have saved the throne, but it is the people's hearts I must win back, she said to her advisors. Victory was not enough. She needed the love and trust of her people to restore the kingdom completely. Through her journey, the queen learned that true leadership was not defined by conquest, but by forgiveness. She had conquered many enemies, but it was the ability to forgive her own son that had been the most difficult, and the most important. It was forgiveness that healed the wounds of betrayal and allowed the kingdom to rise again. As time passed, Queen Amina's legacy began to change. Her story was no longer just one of war and victory, but of wisdom and grace. The people honored her not only for the strength she had shown on the battlefield, but for the wisdom she had gained through her trials. A ruler's greatest strength lies in their ability to rise above personal pain, she thought. She had learned that vengeance was never the answer. Wisdom and love would be the pillars of her rule. The queen reflected on the long journey she had walked. The throne was heavy, but she now understood that the heart was even heavier. The scars of betrayal could not be erased, but she had learned to carry them with grace. The throne is heavy, but the heart is heavier, she concluded. Her kingdom was whole again, but her heart would forever bear the marks of the price she had paid. Through the pain, she emerged not only as a ruler, but as a wise and compassionate leader, ready to guide her people with the lessons of mercy, forgiveness, and love.